Bom dia a todos. Queria agradecer a presença de todo mundo e queria agradecer a presença dos meus colegas de mesa. Esse painel é bastante importante para nós do CAD, porque é a concretização de um compromisso que nós assumimos durante a 5ª Conferência Internacional sobre Concorrência do BRICS, realizada em Brasília em novembro do ano passado. Durante essa reunião, além de discutir temas de grande relevo relacionados à concorrência para os países membros do BRICS, nós assumimos também um compromisso, o Brasil assumiu um compromisso de liderar as discussões sobre o mercado de economia digital. Então, desde essa reunião, nós estabelecemos um grupo de trabalho dentro do CAD para discutir essa temática que é bastante nova e bastante interessante, que apresenta tantos desafios para nós como autoridade de concorrência. E a gente tem mantido contato constante também com os nossos colegas do BRICS para que possamos cooperar como membros do bloco e pensar em modos em comum para superar os desafios que se apresentam em relação ao mercado de economia digital. No nosso painel, então, hoje nós temos o Deputy Head do Federal Anti-Monopoly Service da Rússia, o senhor Andrei Tsiganov. O Andrei, ele é o braço direito do Igor Artemiev, o presidente da autoridade russa, e deve ser um rosto familiar para alguns de vocês que atendem aos eventos da ICN, porque ele é o principal responsável pela área de cooperação internacional dentro do FAS. Então, muito obrigado pela presença, Andrei. A gente está bastante empolgado para ouvir a experiência russa em relação ao mercado de economia digital. Nós temos aqui também a senhora Payal Malik, ela é a Chief Economist da Competition Commission of India. Então, ela é responsável por coordenar todos os economistas dentro da autoridade. Ela já prestou consultoria para o setor privado durante vários anos sobre o setor de telecomunicações e sobre indústrias de rede. Então, Payal, obrigado pela presença também. Um prazer tê-la aqui no Brasil. Nós temos também a senhora Kanisa Kobo. Ela é a Main Advisor for Advocacy Works na South Africa Competition Commission. A Payal fez um trabalho super importante na autoridade, que foi estabelecer uma unidade responsável por coordenar os trabalhos da autoridade com diferentes setores do governo, promovendo consciência em relação à importância da concorrência. Então, muito obrigado, Kanisa, é um prazer tê-la conosco também. E nós temos um outro rosto bastante familiar, que dispensa apresentações, da nossa economista-chefe adjunta, Patrícia Zakowski, quem está coordenando também o grupo de trabalho sobre economia digital no CAD. E, enfim, a gente está em constante diálogo com os nossos parceiros do BRICS. Além disso, eu queria agradecer ao IBRAC, na pessoa do Márcio Bueno, por oferecer essa plataforma de discussão. Muito obrigado, Márcio. Obrigado você e a sua equipe, que foram extremamente solícitos e viabilizaram a concretização desse importante projeto para o CAD. Agora, eu gostaria, então, de passar a palavra para o meu colega da Rússia, o Andrei Tsiganov. Ele vai apresentar, então, a experiência russa, como que a Rússia tem lidado, quais são os principais desafios e que medidas eles têm adotado em relação ao setor de economia digital. Por favor, Andrei.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Fabio, and thank everybody for coming. Yes, it works. It's a great pleasure for me to be here in such a good company of a panelist. And I try to share some Russian experience and some general views of Russian competition authority on the modern digital economy and digital society. And what does it mean for competition law enforcement and for the governmental policy in general in our country. You know that in our everyday life we are facing a lot of new things. A lot of new things in our life and a lot of new things in our personal, professional activity. New market appears. It's software market, it's a market of navigation tools, computer games, document management and accounting, content trade, B2B solution, and so on and so forth. And the traditional markets have a new look. Trade became e-trade. The traditional agricultural industry transferred to the digital farming based on genetic and selection results. In all industrial sectors are robots, machine learning, transportation became human-free, and fintech changed all financial market in general. We face new velocities in everything, new velocities of changes in innovation, in business decision making, in market development, in information exchange. Everybody knows that now there is a totally new role of intellectual property rights and data collection in all business processes. We face new ways of attracting of consumers and communication with consumers through individualization of business-to-person contacts, through the personal data collection, through the extremely important role of social networks in business processes and in the product placement. And all these processes are interactive, so consumer became a part of the business process in general. And due to the process of globalization and growing role of transnational corporation and global value changes, we have a totally new geographical boundaries of the markets, both new markets and traditional ones. And all these new things we call a digital economy. What are the challenges for the competition authority as we understand it? First of all, the process of data collection, processing, analysis, and provision create added value. And at the same time, it creates the market power, the new market power. We have an enormous variety of the forms of monetizations of the results of the business activity. And the velocity of the market change in many cases doesn't match with the velocity of the response and reaction of competition authorities. In the modern life, we have a high role of aggregators, algorithms, platforms, and the network effects are recognized and should be taken in mind in many M&As and many enforcement cases that we are dealing with. We recognize the intellectual property rights as a barrier to market entry and the barrier to entrepreneurial activity in general in many industries. And one of the most important problems in everyday life of competition authorities throughout the world is sort of a conflict between the global nature of business and the cross-border violations of anti-monopoly legislation and the national character of the competition regulation throughout the world. What should we do in this situation? Oh. Yes. What should be a competition authority's response from our point of view? I'd like to start with the question of the market analysis. Why? Because, frankly speaking, the nature of the violation of competition law is nearly the same as 100 or 50 years ago. But the most important thing is the changes in the markets itself. So we need to use new approach to the market definition in abuse and dominance cases and in mergers and acquisition examination, based on the big data, network effect, and the role of the intellectual property rights as intangible asset, as a value, and as a source of the market power. And the correct definition of the market boundaries is a serious problem in the modern life of the competition authorities. Dealing with practical cases of competition law enforcement, we should use the perspective analysis of mergers and violation of the consequences of these business processes. It's strictly needed because the serious analytical tools development is very important because actually nobody can predict the future, but competition authorities should do it. And very serious challenge for competition authorities, for instance in Russia, is the elaboration of new forms of remedies in competition law enforcement process, in case handling and in M&A analysis. These new forms of remedies should be based on the modern theory or maybe theories of harm. And from our point of view, a sort of accuracy in enforcement is very important. It helps us to avoid errors in competition law enforcement and to avoid the possible limitation of the progress of a human society in general. We have some, I think, very interesting examples of competition law enforcement on the new markets, including Bayer-Monsanto merger, including some Uber, Google, Big Pharma, or Microsoft cases that we handled last years. Another very important area of the competition law authorities' activity and is the cartels. And first of all, new kinds of cartels and new ways of cartelization in a digital era. We face the intensive use of a big data for anti-competitive purposes to restrict competition and force competitors out of the market through the digital cartels, price manipulation on the back of big data and personal data analysis, and the bid reading with the use of robots and algorithms. And the main outcome is that competition authority must counterbalance the technical progress of cartel participants using their own modern technical and analytical tools to identify and prove cartels. A few words about Russian experience in cartel area. You can see the figures, so we are very experienced authority. Last year, we recognized more than 300 cartels in the Russian market, and it's very important that 80% of these cartels are cartels during bid reading. And as one of my colleagues, Andrei Tsarikovsky, told a few years ago, we need a digital cat to catch a digital mouse. And to help us in the cartel enforcement, our IT specialist 1 or 2 years ago invented so-called multi-parameter system for detecting and proving cartels. This system could analyze something about 50 different indicators of potential e-cartels in online regime. We can analyze the number of participants, the amount of price reduction, the victory of one participant in many bids, or an alternated victory of a few participants in many bids. So common things like the use of one IP address for application, independent application of participants in the public tenders, and identical file features. And finally, we include in the list on the latest stage of analysis such parameters like connection of activity between persons using the web data and social networks. What are the results of this analytical work? You see the number of cartels detected by Federal Anti-Monopoly Service every year. Now we clearly understand that the digital form of public tenders using unified electronic tender system in Russia is very helpful for our cartel investigation process. And it's a great fora and a great opportunity for Russian Competition Authority that inside one institution we combine the functions of competition law enforcement and public procurement supervision. It helps us to do it faster and to do it more effective. Nowadays we recognize that, that in digital world all the actors left a lot of digital traces, and we know how to find these digital traces and how to prove the cartel used these digital traces of anti-competitive activity. And moreover, this year, just a few months ago, a special digital investigation division was created and institutionalized inside the anti-cartel department of the Federal Anti-Monopoly Service. A few words about the competition policy in general, not only the competition law enforcement. Last year, the Federal Anti-Monopoly Service elaborated a so-called National Competition Development Plan. It was approved by the special decree of the President of the Russian Federation on the main directions of a state policy on the development of competition. We drafted a set of amendments to the competition law, the so-called fifth anti-monopoly package, and these amendments are a response of the competition law authority to the challenges in the digital world and in the digital economy. We are going to introduce the definition of network effect, the definition of algorithms. We want to clarify the definition of dominant position and some rules of the merger control, and introduce the new approach to the role of professional expert in competition law enforcement cases, and the special role of so-called trustees in the area of supervision of the implementation of the remedies imposed by the competition authorities in enforcement cases and in M&A cases. This year, the Federal Anti-Monopoly Service of the Russian Federation developed a report on development of competition policy in the digital economy. This report to the heads of the governments of the former Soviet Union countries, of the CIS countries, was presented during the last Russian Competition Week last month. And we understand that the most important, very important thing is the use of a so-called soft law. Federal Anti-Monopoly Service is very active in the making clarifications of our decisions, in introducing of guidelines for the market, in introduction and support of implementation of the anti-monopoly companies by big Russian and international companies in Russia. But the governmental policy in the development of information society is very important as well. Why it's important for the Federal Anti-Monopoly Service of Russia? Because of the specificity of Russian competition law. Russian competition law covers not only anti-competitive behavior by enterprises, but the anti-competitive behavior by authorities as well. And these our ideas are a sort of a set of recommendations to the governments, to the governmental authorities, how to work in the digital era. Everybody knows that government is very, very active in this area. We have some e-government projects, G2B project, G2P projects, some ideas and some laws on personal data protection, special regulation of e-sector, of e-trade, of some other sector that are close to the digital market. And from our point of view, some pro-competitive basic principles should be introduced in all these governmental policies. First one is that governmental policy shouldn't create conditions for the monopolization of the infrastructure or of digital economies and its key elements. Secondly, governmental policy should be built on the principles of technological network neutrality and non-discrimination. Thirdly, it should ensure the functioning of a unified electronic space or infrastructure on the base of interconnected information and communication infrastructure. This pro-competitive approach was one of the main outcomes of above-mentioned report by the Federal Anti-Monopoly Service to the governments of the CIS countries. Here in Brazil, I should say a few words about the international dimension of our activity in the digital era. In the framework of BRICS, as Fabio mentioned just now, we signed a memorandum of understanding between BRICS competition authorities on cooperation in the field of competition law and policy. And the digital sector is considered to be as one of the top priorities inside the set of socially important markets. The special BRICS working group on digital markets was established, and today is the first official meeting of this working group. And this year, the special BRICS Competition Law and Policy Center was established and institutionalized in Russia. And now it's sponsored by the Russian Federation government. And it was the platform for exchange of minds, exchange of best experience of both competition authorities and academia in research of the problem of competition law enforcement and competition development in socially important markets, including the digital markets as well. And our idea and our main goal and international dimension is the creation of a system of multilateral cooperation, voluntary multilateral cooperation of competition authority that is adequate to the challenges of the digital economy and to the modern economy in general. Taking in mind this idea, 2 years ago we started a project of elaboration of so-called toolkit of international cooperation of competition authorities to combat restrictive business practices. We started this project in the framework of UNCTAD, and we are very lucky that this project is officially supported by a number of United Nations member states. And the most ambitious project is a draft international convention on the fight against cartel. We are sure that we need at least 5 years or maybe more to work on this project, but one of the first steps to start the intensive discussion on in this area was a special statement of the Council of the Heads of the CIS governments to intensify efforts against international cartels that have been made on the meeting of the heads of the government of CIS countries in Tashkent last year. So it seems to me that the cooperation of competition authorities of BRICS countries and the cooperation of all interested competition authorities of the different parts of the world is the main source of our success in this very intensive and very important work. Thank you for your attention.
Muito obrigado, Andrei. Spasiba. Eu passo agora a palavra para Payal Malik, a economista-chefe da Autoridade de Concorrência da Índia.
Thank you very much, Fabio, and my thanks to CADE Brazil and IBRAC for having us over here to discuss the perspective from India. The topic which I was given was antitrust and digital economy. How are the BRICS countries dealing with it? And I would here then present the views which are still developing, because these are new issues which are coming before antitrust authorities in our part of the world, and how we are thinking about these issues. Yes, we have enforcement experience now for the past 9 years, but the enforcement experience in the digital economy has been that of last 2 to 3 years. And for enforcement, our view is that enforcement is possible if we understand markets very well, and good enforcement, I mean, is we have to understand the markets very well, we have to understand the economics of these markets very well, and therefore the Digital Economy Working Group in the Competition Commission of India is situated in the Economics Division, led by me, because there is an interplay of economics and the antitrust law, and the greater the interplay with the economics, and I was just discussing with my colleague in the meeting that the academicians started writing about this way back in 2003 when Jean Tirole with Rocher wrote his seminal paper on two-sided markets and multi-sided markets and competition concerns, and for which he was cited in his in the Nobel citation, the Nobel Prize, which he got in 2014. And the competition authorities are now coming to terms with the operationalizing of those two-sided markets and the issues which were raised by the economists. So there is a huge amount of literature in the economics discipline that can guide antitrust enforcement. But having said that, when rubber meets the road, the facts are so case specific that the general principles tend to elude enforcement practices. Before I get into the issues of the digital economy, it's very important to understand the milieu in which the enforcement and advocacy or in digital economy is placed. India adopted a competition law in 2002, enforced only in 2009, replacing the erstwhile Monopolies and Restricted Trade Practices Act. So it moved from a very structuralist law where monopolies were bad, big was bad, and the approach of the MRTP, that is the monopolies body, was to control monopolies and to restrict the size. No longer, as we all know, sitting in this room, those having dealt with competition law, that no longer big means bad. And when we are away from that simplistic notion of monopolies and their conduct, things get more complicated, and more so in the digital economy. So we have enforcement functions, Section 3 relating to agreements, Section 4 abuse of dominance, Section 5 and 6 relating to combinations and mergers. We have advisory and advocacy functions. So the advisory and advocacy function is also a strong pillar of the competition law. So it is one of the edifices on which the modern competition law rests, because enforcement, so competition law is not all about enforcement. A lot of it is on advocacies and understanding markets and taking relevant policy, making relevant policy opinions on the same. The preamble of the Act, it is very important to understand what the Act expects out of the enforcers, gives a very good cue to, and that is true not only for the bricks and mortar sector, but also for the digital economy. The preamble links the micro-functioning of individual markets and larger development imperatives of the country. So the competition law is situated not in isolation, but in the larger development goals, which are professed by the changing policy milieu of our country. And the competition law was put in place in order to leverage the benefits of liberalized markets. So liberalization of markets, investments, entry of firms, an open economy framework, no longer a closed economy framework where we promote national champions, is the background in which the competition law operates. The focus of the law is on competition and not on the protection of competitors. And in some sense, it is a purist law, and it's very important to state that, because in India, and this has been stated at many forums by our chairperson, is that it is not an instrument to serve public interest. Public interest is included in the law through a system of exemptions, where the policymaker has the right to exempt certain sectors of the economy or certain deals or actually certain sectors of the economy or a class of enterprises from the application of the law. So the Indian competition law is aligned in architecture with the global antitrust practices, and in some sense integrates seamlessly with the globalized law enforcement. Quickly, in the law, cartels are presumed to be anti-competitive. Vertical restraints, that is any vertical agreements between parties, we adopt a rule of reason framework. That is, there is a weighing of pro-competitive benefits against the anti-competitive harms. So is true for combinations and mergers. And the abuse of dominance is per se illegal. Competition concepts are expressively defined, and there is a major role for economic analysis, and there are powers to impose penalty, and more importantly, the law also has extraterritorial jurisdictions. Now, in this background, how do we now deal with the problems related to the antitrust issues in digital markets? I'm not going to get into the details of the cases. Cases are well known. We have Google's, Uber's, Microsoft's, Indian players also like Flipkart, Amazon, etc., who are under the lens of competition authorities. Now, the dilemma actually is, and that is the dilemma which we have to balance on a day-to-day basis while dealing with digital markets, is that these markets and these they introduce innovative products and services to consumers. So that cannot be taken away, and that's a known fact. But then how do you balance the network effects, the benefits of the network effects? Because it is precisely due to these network effects. So the word network effects can be used either pejoratively, or the word network effects can be used to commend these industries who have exploited these cross-sided network effects and the same-sided network effects to bring in products which are useful for the consumers. And how to determine the limits of intervention in these innovative technological markets. The Commission faces these dilemmas on a day-to-day basis related to digital markets, because an uninformed or an overly interventionist policy will risk chilling of investment in the accumulation and use, because most of these markets are markets which are online platforms exploiting usage of big data through legitimate means or illegitimate means. So wherein lies the balance? That's exactly the kind of checks which the competition authorities has to do, so such that we don't lose out on significant benefits to competitors, to competition and innovation. And on the other hand, a too lax enforcement can risk turning a blind eye to users of this big data that are harmful to competition and consumers. Here also I would like to mention that the welfare standard which competition authorities adopt do have a bearing on the final, on the way the enforcement jurisprudence develops. For instance, India has categorically said that we have a consumer welfare standard, but when I'm saying we have a consumer welfare standard, we do not have a static view. We do have a dynamic view where not only prices matter, innovation matters, and innovation theory of harm can be built in even in the consumer welfare approach. So a nuanced approach has to be followed. So the questions which we are looking at, so I'll start with step by step, that is in big data. The question is, does collection of huge data masses create such a competitive advantage that some data collections resemble essential facilities? Fortunately, we have not treaded the path of the essential facility doctrine when it comes to large companies having the data advantage, because the view currently is that data is ubiquitous, it is available, it is non-rivalrous. What matters is how that data is collected and the analytics which is adopted on that data. That's what matters, and some companies may be just good to produce those kinds of analytics and products. So as long the data is collected in a way that, and that data does not create unsurmountable, and I'm using the term unsurmountable barriers to entry. Big data alone cannot be a reason for anti-competitive harm. So if it is creating a barrier to entry, what can be done about it? Under what conditions should data be available and to whom? Because we can talk till cows come home that big data is according advantage to these large companies, and because of the network effects, the big are getting bigger, but then what are the solutions to that problem? And what are the with those solutions, what are the kind of trade-offs which we have to look at? Because should data monopolies be prevented by rules on fair access to data? What about consumer privacy? So in India, the approach we have taken, and that I think is different from the approach which has been taken by the French and the German competition authorities, is that privacy may not be an antitrust concern. And so that So I'm just talking about how currently it is developing. Things may change. But privacy as an antitrust concern, I'm putting a question mark. And the data sharing as an antitrust remedy may have the effect of curtailing innovation and give rise to privacy concerns. The reason we do not look at privacy from the antitrust lens is because privacy is a very amorphous concept. And privacy being subjective, it is very difficult to actually demarcate the contours of privacy in terms of price, as no value can be attached to it. And user privacy is very diverse in nature. So even in India, there's the kind of privacy we think about what is privacy and kind of what Europeans think. It's very different. Indians sitting in a railway, going from one place to another, share everything about their lives. So the point I'm trying to make it is to getting privacy into the antitrust boundaries may be difficult because of the not a single value which is attached to privacy. So ex-ante instrument of data protection law, however, is being used, but we are still in our what is known as our jurisprudential journey. India didn't have a data protection law, does not have a data protection law till date. The draft bill has been is before the Parliament and before the Standing Committee, and we would come with the data protection law soon. So the level playing field which needs to be built in, which is a competition concern, has now been is introduced into the data protection law, where the right of data has been now given to the individual. The individual is to decide how the data is to be used, and the data principal has to seek from the data fiduciary their personal data in a structured, commonly used, and machine-readable format so that he or she can move from one business to the other and does not get locked in because of the data. The other area in the digital economy, which is of a concern and requires immediate so as far as the Act goes, the question which is normally asked in such platforms is the Act sufficiently structured in order to address the new economy? The answer is yes, but we are seeing that there may be a blind spot when it comes to mergers and acquisitions, because mergers between companies holding big data, where transaction, assets, and turnover criteria are the way in which we decide whether a particular transaction is notifiable or not, may result in very important transactions not being notified, and because data is not accounted as an asset. So there may be a time now to revisit the desirability of uniform thresholds, given the high size of the deals. We are also thinking in terms of amending the Act by bringing in size of the transaction rather than the asset and turnover threshold. And the reason why more impetus is being given to an antitrust scrutiny, so that's where we think that antitrust scrutiny is important, is at the time is an ex-ante approach, because ex-post instruments may be even counterproductive, as the lock-in effects of the consumers may be too entrenched. The consumers love their the data products which they are using, and any antitrust remedy, given the lock-in effects, may be counterproductive, and hence it is at the time of mergers and acquisitions to correct for any possible harms. Another area in India which is very important in the digital economy is e-commerce, because our startup ecosystem is very, very rich. The startups who are actually piggybacking on these online platforms, which have made or opened huge vistas of transacting on these platforms, bringing the producers and the consumers together. To just give you a sense of it, by 2026, the Indian e-commerce market would be around 200 billion and US dollars in US dollar terms, and may go up to $1 trillion until 2030. So what we are thinking at the Commission is, before we get into hyper mode of enforcement. But there are certain issues in e-commerce markets, taxi aggregator markets. There were issues. We had an Uber issue in the market. We had issues of surge pricing. We had issues of common ownership, that is across competing platforms. There are similar firms which are now investing in these competing platforms. To give you an example, SoftBank is competing both in Uber as well as the Indian unicorn, the taxi aggregator Ola. How do we look at those things? So the Commission has adopted, as I said, a cautious approach. So we are going to getting into a kind of a market inquiry or a market study, such that bad enforcement does not throw the baby with the bathwater. So we are trying to study the prevailing market trends, focus on the distribution methods, the strategies to understand those vertical agreements, the business practices, because these are new markets. And intervention in these markets would therefore require a very, very comprehensive understanding of those markets, and to ascertain the enforcement and advocacy priorities for the Commission. So wherein should the Commission be proactive and take the enforcement route, and wherein the Commission should be proactive and take in the advocacy route by bringing in the correct kind of a policy architecture, regulations, because regulations itself can be anti-competitive. The policy structure can also diminish or attenuate competition. So that's the one area which we are looking at seriously. And we mentioned about cartelization, and cartelization is possible in digital markets. It's great. The threat of cartelization is getting more and more accentuated on the fact that most of these firms are using algorithms, which creates the conditions conducive for cartels, transparency, market intelligence, collection of market intelligence, etc. So whether machine learning algorithms in an e-commerce marketplace will figure a way to collude with other algorithms. There is a view that it will be impossible to determine whether these algorithms are actually coordinating. Should there be an audit, so to speak, of pricing algorithms, and should competition authorities be looking at the audit of these algorithms and see the interplay of these algorithms such that with competition, and to monitor these algorithms. These are still issues which we are discussing in-house, and for that matter, we have established a think tank, because a lot of this would now go beyond even the realm of economists and lawyers, would require technologists, and so we have established a think tank comprising of technologists, legal experts, and economists to help the Commission in its market inquiries, understanding the competition implications of policies and technologies in the digital markets, and also participate in advising the Commission in the cases involving digital markets, and policy advocacy on imminent issues. So before I conclude, I just read out quickly these two paragraphs from the CCI's recent judgment on Google, and that pretty much explains India's approach to these digital markets. One is that even in the majority order, we did find contravention on part of Google. The nuances were still expressed, and that is very, very much clear from the kind of remedies that were imposed and from the kind of penalties that were imposed, which were in proportion to the kind of effect to competition, in proportion to the competition harm that was figured out from that case. So innovation cycles are progressing at a fast pace in digital economy, disrupting and reshuffling long-established positions. In this context, it is of paramount importance that public intervention in such markets should be targeted and proportionate. Such a calibrated approach in technological markets ensures the intervention remains effective. It does not restrain innovation and helps the market to regulate itself. This concern, which applies to all economic sectors, has undoubtedly more resonance in the digital market. However, The CCI has also observed in the same order that such markets are often characterized by winner-takes-it-all phenomenon. So if in a given case, the Commission finds the conduct to be egregious, appropriate remedies and directions shall be introduced to correct such distortions. So policymakers in India have rightfully, I think, recognized the breadth and regulatory toolbox available to deal with technology economy. So you have issues of data portability, data sharing, data privacy, big data issues. And we have recognized, and that's how it is emanating, given the fact that our data protection law, that competition law alone cannot provide a satisfactory solution. Consumer protection, data privacy, or sector-specific approaches may provide more appropriate legal remedies. With that, I conclude my presentation, and thank you for listening.
Muito obrigado, Payal. Foi, sem dúvida, muito interessante ouvir como que os trabalhos da CCI estão avançados em relação à análise do setor de economia digital. Eu passo agora a palavra para Manager of Advocacy and Public Affairs da Autoridade de Concorrência Sul-Africana, a Compcom. Então, Kanisa Kobo, com você.
Thank you very much, Fabio. And good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you to our hosts, Kade and Ibrak, for inviting us to this beautiful city. I'll be speaking today on the same theme as my colleagues from Russia and India on understanding and regulating digital markets, and I'll be giving a perspective from South Africa. So just the outline of my presentation is brief. I'll be giving a general political economic context of where South Africa is at currently as it engages with these issues of the digital economy. I'll give some case studies of ongoing cases that we are investigating in this area. Am I audible? Yes, okay. And then I'll make general concluding remarks. So the picture in South Africa is like that of many of us in emerging economies. There is high unemployment, there are high levels of inequality, there is low growth, and generally a low skills base. So in this context, it's a cocktail or a recipe that when there are technological developments, you could have an outcome where there are winners and losers. So the digital technologies offer an opportunity to create new levels of efficiency, of course, and they also offer an opportunity for new sources of growth. At the same time, these changes can lead to economic exclusion and marginalization of many, and this is a feature that is evident not only in developing economies, but you see it even in the north, where you see protests, for example, around the e-hailing rides, from citizens, from consumers who may be feeling marginalized, or from service providers who may be using older technology. And so these are elements that as authorities, but also as nations, we would need to be conscious of. So for the opportunities to be realized, there needs to be an ecosystem that can accommodate this. The first is, of course, transformation of business. I think business needs to review or rethink how it approaches and how it perceives what a market is, how it thinks of its value chains, its systems, means of production, its perspective on who is the customer and how to reach them, and so on. So that requires an element of innovation from the business sector. The ICT infrastructure within a particular nation would need to be in place to be able to accommodate these trends. you need a digital-ready workforce who is able to move these forward. Ultimately, we may be talking about technology as a virtual concept, but there are human beings that are required behind them who need to be appropriately skilled. And then, of course, you need appropriate regulation that is efficient, that is effective, and also that promotes both growth and inclusion to avoid that situation of winners and losers I was talking about earlier. So generally, or broadly speaking, there needs to be a broader understanding of these issues of the digital economy and how we as antitrust authorities engage with them beyond just a narrow view of competition policy. So coming to South Africa specifically, we have various challenges of an elementary nature, actually. The first is that of access to this economy by many citizens. We have relatively high costs of data, and I'll talk a little bit more about what we as an authority are doing to address some of the complaints we've received in this area. But even by benchmarking, across the board, it's a difficult area to assess, when you benchmark against other countries because the variables are also different. But there is certainly a national discourse that's ongoing and a general restlessness socially about the high cost of data and what this means for businesses, for the youth, and so on. So you've got a high proportion of citizens who do have mobile devices. Some of the statistics I've read are saying 75% of the citizens are connected, but yet cannot afford accessing that internet. So, I hear with my colleagues talking about, prosecuting your Googles, when in our case, many of the citizens cannot even access Google. So it really puts us as an authority in a precarious position. There's also ongoing ICT, information communication technology debates at the policy level. One of those is on the allocation of spectrum. It's been back and forth for many years, but essentially there is a draft bill out even currently that seeks to essentially promote infrastructure sharing or infrastructure expansion amongst the 4 existing telcos so that there can be a wider rollout of broadband across the geographic areas of the country. And as you can imagine, policy debates of this nature, there are competition elements. We've been contributing or made comments to these, but it may take years for these matters to be sorted out. And in the meantime, we are in the situation where there isn't enough spectrum that's been allocated to cover the entire reach of the country. One of the proposals, as you can see on the slide there, is from government is that of establishing your own wholesale open access network that essentially would be a consortium of some of these telcos and then could perhaps reach non-metropolitan areas. Also, we are still in analog phase with television and still have not migrated to DTT, digital terrestrial television. And once again, it's a policy issue, which is a code for a political issue. And so, I won't get into the details of this. It's not my space to be doing so, but these are just some of the challenges or the bottlenecks that perhaps may be inhibiting the full realization of the benefits of the digital economy. And then a second broad issue is that of innovation levels. In South Africa, we may all be aware of our history from apartheid, of that being a closed economy, highly concentrated, few firms, many of whom, those which are dominant, became dominant because of state support rather than through innovation or competitiveness. So that culture remains, even 20 years after democracy. And so, as the world is moving in this direction of, the digital economy, how well positioned are South African firms to be able to tap into that wave and take advantage of it? We have high prevalence of cartels. I must say, I thought our number of 233 cases was the global, tops number. I was shocked to hear the Russians have 360, and that's in the 2017-18 financial year. But even if you compare the sizes of our economies, this is a significantly large number for an economy of our size for us to be handling that number of cartels. That already speaks to you about these culture issues that I was making reference to. Also, we have many multinationals, of course. It's an open and diverse economy. But essentially, are these firms importing digital strategies from their mother countries or home countries, or are they homegrown digital technologies and digital strategies that are being implemented by firms and adopted by firms locally? And, one cannot say. So I'll speak about some of the cases that we are handling currently in this arena. I'll give a few examples. There are not many. We've all been saying, it's a new area for us. But we have a cartel case that relates to Forex, which many of us perhaps around the room may have also had in their respective authorities. We've simply named it the Bank of America one because alphabetically they are first in the list of the 22 respondents, so we're not picking on them. But it's some local South African banks and international banks who colluded on the rand-dollar currency pair. And we've already referred this case to our competition tribunal. There have been settlements in other jurisdictions, even here in Brazil, on the same contravention, but pertaining to the currencies of those countries. But in South Africa, they are putting up a big fight, all 22 of them. And there are ongoing challenges in the courts of a variety of nature around, do we have jurisdiction, call for the record of investigation, and so on. So we still have not argued the case on merits, we're still on technicalities. We also have a case, also a cartel case on market allocation in automotive. So here we've got a company that's vertically integrated across the entire value chain, and they use an app to direct tow trucks to the accident scene. So the complainant is alleging that the tow trucks will then take those vehicles for repairs to the respondent's own auto body repair shops, essentially. So this is an allegation essentially about the manipulation of the algorithms of that app. And I think it speaks to this new way of cartelization that my colleagues have made reference to here. So this investigation is ongoing. We are also undertaking a market inquiry into the costs of data, which I've already mentioned is a prohibitive factor in South Africa. So we initiated this in August 2017, and I've listed there some of the objectives or the terms of reference of this inquiry. So, cost drivers obviously is one aspect of that, but we're looking to see the factors that distort or inhibit competition in this particular market. We're currently gathering evidence and we expect to complete this in March 2019. There is a huge public interest in this. Last week, I've lost track of days since I've been in Brazil, but I think it was last week we had public hearings actually here. It was, a highly is it emotive exercise with many stakeholders participating. There's a big interest in this. I think also, of course, it's elections next year, so I think there are many more people who are interested who ordinarily wouldn't be. All right, and then we also running a market inquiry into public transport. This is land-based public passenger transport, so that's rails, that's railroad and essentially on land. So part of this would be looking obviously at the e-hailing rides such as Uber and Taxify, and also looking to understand the issues of the algorithms and the general operation of the apps in terms of price setting, customer and driver allocation. I've got a list there on the slide of the broader terms of reference. All right, so in conclusion, I think my colleagues have already articulated very well some of the challenges that face us as authorities. And I won't get into details, but obviously this issue of defining the market, digital economy is transnational in nature, it's cross-border. There's also overlaps of the markets themselves. They are complex markets. Also, there are new or unknown markets for us as authorities. There's also public interest issues, of course, which arise particularly for an authority like South Africa, whose law or mandate is a balance between both efficiency and development perspectives. So, we need to think around how these changes impact on that balance. So an example being on the changes in the nature of worker conditions of work. So if we are assessing a merger, or we're dealing with an enforcement case where there may be job losses due to the technological efficiencies that the case presents, how do we handle that as an authority? And then there's broader national security issues, which I think these types of markets or cases pose as well. So just as a way forward, I think it's important that we develop a wider or broader understanding of the digital economy beyond the perspective of just the competition policy framework. We need to strengthen our cooperation and partnership, knowing that no authority can work alone in this context due to the complexity and transnational nature of these markets, particularly in BRICS and the Global South. Let's continue our cooperation on cross-border enforcement around cartels and mergers, the research and advocacy initiatives, exchanges and learning that we are already embarking on needs to be strengthened. Our respective regulatory frameworks probably need a review. South Africa currently is undergoing a process of amending its Competition Act. The future will only tell whether the new amendments are adequate for the digital economy, but we may very well, as authorities, all be in a position where we may need to, strengthen our framework. And not just competition laws, but perhaps the broader, competition policy framework, be it industrial policy and other forms of economic policies that may need to be reviewed. And then finally, consumers need to be empowered, small businesses, the small guys who may feel the exclusion from these processes. And I think our considerations on public interest, the advocacy work we undertake can go a long way in addressing some of that potential harm. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kanisa. It is really interesting to note that although the sector it is under development within South Africa, the competition authority is not neglecting the challenge and the importance of this sector, and you're also coordinating your work with different sectors of the economy, of the government. So thank you very much and congratulations for your presentation. Com a palavra, a nossa economista-chefe adjunta do CAD, a Patrícia Sakulski. Patrícia.
Obrigada. Bom dia a todos. Obrigada pela presença. Em nome do presidente do CAD, Alexandre Barreto, eu gostaria de estender um agradecimento especial a todos os representantes aqui dos países dos BRICS, que nos honram com a sua presença para discutir esse tópico tão desafiador e também compartilhar conosco a sua valiosa experiência. Agradeço também ao IBRAC pela oportunidade de termos essa mesa nesse evento tão bem organizado. Bem, quando nós falamos sobre competição e economia digital, na verdade, o primeiro pensamento que vem à cabeça é como competir pela atenção de vocês com todos os celulares e aparelhos digitais, agora há poucos minutos antes do almoço. Ainda mais depois do Baden-Baden, né? Então, de fato, eu peço aí a atenção de vocês e, claro, não vai ser esse o tópico da apresentação. O que eu gostaria, na verdade, de abordar hoje são 3 pontos principais. Em primeiro lugar, como que a tecnologia está transformando os negócios no Brasil? Em segundo, como essa tendência se reflete nos casos que aparecem dentro do CAD? Em terceiro lugar, como o CAD está lidando com esses novos desafios que surgem com a digitalização da economia? Então, para a primeira pergunta, como que a tecnologia está mudando os negócios no Brasil? Pela apresentação dos nossos colegas anteriores, vai ser possível notar que essas tendências que nós verificamos aqui não são específicas do Brasil. Elas são percebidas no mundo todo, tanto em países emergentes como em países já desenvolvidos. Um primeiro aspecto que eu gostaria de mencionar é essa mudança de modelos de negócio tradicionais, lineares, para plataformas de múltiplos lados. Então, no passado, nós tínhamos esses modelos de negócios baseados em cadeias de valor lineares, né, a produção, a distribuição, de forma linear, e agora a gente muda para essas plataformas, muitas vezes baseadas em nuvem e tudo mais. Essas plataformas, elas são presentes em diferentes setores da economia, né, desde comunicação, networking, com Facebook, mas também com educação, se a gente pensar em Coursera, edX, finanças, como foi mencionado aqui, transportes, elas são onipresentes nos diferentes setores. E muitas dessas plataformas, elas criam valor ao fazer o matching, né, entre os diferentes tipos de usuários. Por exemplo, motoristas e passageiros, pessoas que estão fazendo buscas na internet, nesse caso, entre usuários e anunciantes, e, às vezes, até mesmo, no caso do Tinder, parceiros românticos. Então, o que nós temos é que dados e algoritmos são cruciais para a realização desses matchings. Por quê? Ao entender o comportamento do consumidor, essas plataformas, por exemplo, podem direcionar o anúncio que vai ser mais adequado para gerar uma compra. Eles podem ajudar a identificar quais são os compradores mais interessantes para serem mirados. E, mais importante de tudo, eles podem ajudar a monetizar esses dados em troca de algum serviço, digamos, entre aspas, de graça, né? Ao mesmo tempo, esses algoritmos eles podem ser utilizados para favorecer um fornecedor específico, por exemplo, o seu próprio resultado, para silenciosamente discriminar rivais, porque silenciosamente, com algoritmos eu posso aprofundar ou diminuir como que a minha aranhinha, né, a aranha que vai fazer o spidering da internet, vai verificar os diferentes sites e facilitar também coordenação de preços ou discriminação de preços. E tudo isso acontece numa velocidade sem precedentes, por causa de feedback loops e efeitos de rede. Nós saímos daquela economia em que a gente tinha um crescimento linear para plataformas que apresentam um crescimento exponencial. Então, sob esse efeito, uma firma pode dominar o mercado muito rapidamente, dentro desse efeito denominado normalmente winner takes it all, mas, ao mesmo tempo, do mesmo modo como ela conseguiu crescer muito rapidamente, em face de um competidor mais interessante, ela também pode perder essa dominância de modo análogo num processo, chamamos assim, de loser loses it all. E, além disso, o fato de que muitas dessas plataformas digitais não precisam depender de ativos físicos para o seu crescimento, também contribui para que haja um crescimento muito rápido, né? Esse slide, eu imagino que muitos já viram em outras apresentações, mostra esse fenômeno muito bem, né? Então, o Uber, que seria uma das maiores companhias de transporte, não tem nenhum veículo. E Airbnb, que também é um player muito importante em acomodação, não tem nada de real estate. E, finalmente, o que nós temos é que as inovações podem ser feitas de modo modular. O que isso significa? Então, a gente poderia usar, por exemplo, o serviço de mapas de um determinado aplicativo, o serviço de pagamento de algum determinado outro serviço, e, com base nessas pecinhas, né, como Legos, conseguir criar também outras inovações complementares. Muito bem. Então, então, resumindo, né, nós temos essa mudança dos modelos tradicionais para plataformas, essa importância cada vez maior de dados e algoritmos, e essa mudança em ritmo muito rápido. Então, como que essas mudanças têm aparecido no CAD em forma de casos? Para fazer esse levantamento, nós utilizamos o SEI, que é o nosso Sistema Eletrônico de Informações, para tentar fazer um levantamento de todos os casos que passaram pelo CAD envolvendo a economia digital. E aí, uma primeira pergunta a se fazer é o que é a economia digital? E, de fato, não seria possível dizer que há um consenso nessa definição, e o que nós fizemos, então, foi tomar uma abordagem bastante prática. Nós identificamos algumas palavras-chave que estão aí colocadas e, com base nelas, utilizamos a plataforma do SEI para identificar esses casos. É claro que essa metodologia tem falhas, provavelmente há muitos casos que acabaram não sendo identificados, mas a gente acredita que já possa passar uma visão interessante do que tem acontecido. Nós tivemos, então, 57 casos envolvendo a economia digital, tendo em vista esses critérios adotados, sendo 42 de mergers and acquisitions, 10 de conduta unilateral e 5 de cartéis. Então, vou falar um pouco de cada um deles. Em relação a mergers and acquisitions, nós tivemos 42 casos, a maioria dos quais, 38, foi aprovada sem restrições. Tivemos 4 casos que foram aprovados com remédios, sendo 3 deles no sistema financeiro. Então, nós tivemos a compra da XP pela Itaú, que é uma plataforma de investimentos, ou a XP, tivemos a joint venture de bancos para a criação de um bureau de créditos e tivemos também essa joint venture entre o Itaú Unibanco e Mastercard para a criação de uma nova bandeira de cartão de crédito e débito. Em relação a cartéis, nós identificamos 5 casos que estavam, de alguma forma, relacionados a algoritmos e uso de softwares para a coordenação de preços. Então, um deles envolveu o uso de um sistema automatizado para coordenar preços na indústria de aviação. Num segundo caso, nós tivemos autoescolas que acabaram chamando uma companhia de TI para desenvolver um software para facilitar a coordenação de preços. E, num terceiro, tivemos uma associação de produtores de placas de carros que também usaram um sistema eletrônico para fixar o preço dessas placas. Então, aqui eu saliento que, apesar desses casos envolverem, de algum modo, algoritmos e softwares, nós conseguimos tratar desses casos, de certo modo, como cartéis tradicionais, né? Então, os algoritmos e softwares, nesses casos, pareciam ter sido usados mais como um método diferente para a coordenação, mas não foi necessário fazer uma adaptação das nossas leis e procedimentos para dar conta desses casos, né? Saliento, por outro lado, que nós não tivemos nenhum caso envolvendo colusão tácita de algoritmos gerada por algoritmos autônomos, self-learning. Por trás dessas coordenações de preços, tinham pessoas usando os métodos tradicionais. Então, condutas unilaterais. Essa é uma área em que a digitalização da economia, de fato, teve um impacto bastante grande. Nós identificamos 10 casos na economia digital, 5 que estão ainda com investigações em curso, 2 que geraram acordos cease and desist, e 3 casos que foram fechados devido à ausência de evidências. Eu gostaria só de salientar alguns desses casos. O primeiro deles envolveu as OTAs, Online Travel Agencies, que estavam utilizando cláusulas de Most Favored Nation. E esse é um caso que acabou não gerando uma multa, mas um cease and desist agreement no Brasil. Eu saliento esse caso porque ele foi fruto de investigação de autoridades em vários lugares do mundo e é um caso que nós pretendemos monitorar para avaliar como têm sido os efeitos desse remédio também. Temos também o Google, que, em termos de condutas unilaterais, acaba perfazendo quase a maior parte dos casos, né? Então, nós temos um caso envolvendo API, o caso de scraping, search bias e Yelp, né? Eles foram apelidados assim no CAD. O API consiste na investigação sobre cláusulas abusivas nos termos de uso do software utilizado pelo Google nas campanhas de publicidade. O scraping se refere ao scraping, né, a cópia, digamos, de conteúdo competitivo relevante de rivais, e o search bias é sobre o favorecimento de propriedades próprias. Esse é o caso análogo ao famoso caso Google Shopping de outras jurisdições. Temos também o caso Yelp, que se refere a um abuso de posição dominante, também ao desviar tráfego para o seu próprio local search engine, né? Então, esses 2 primeiros ainda estão sob julgamento no tribunal, apesar de a superintendência ter recomendado o seu arquivamento. E os 2 últimos, Search Bias e Yelp, ainda estão sob investigação na superintendência. Temos também um caso sob investigação envolvendo fintechs. Muito bem. E como, então, o CAD tem lidado com todos os desafios que surgem com essa nova digitalização da economia? Em primeiro lugar, eu gostaria de mencionar que nós criamos tanto um grupo de trabalho interno no CAD, como esse grupo de trabalho dos BRICS, que o CAD tem tido o prazer de coordenar e de contar com todos os representantes aqui hoje. E quais são alguns dos tópicos que têm estado sob discussão, né? Em primeiro lugar, precisaremos rever os nossos limites de faturamento para notificação de casos, né? E a questão de incumbentes adquirindo startups. Como foi mencionado em vários casos, como definir mercado relevante em plataformas de múltiplos lados? Como nos preparar para lidar da melhor forma com condutas envolvendo algoritmos? Como dar conta de efeitos não preço e outros tópicos emergentes. Então, eu vou falar bem brevemente de cada um desses tópicos, em relação à necessidade de mudar os nossos limites de faturamento. É importante destacar que nós, no Brasil, temos a possibilidade de investigar qualquer caso dentro de 1 ano após a sua consumação. Então, a princípio, isso tem sido suficiente para nós para tentar identificar algum caso que mereça o escrutínio da autoridade. Nós também temos sido ativos em tentar ter mais ferramentas para capturar esse tipo de operação, por exemplo, investindo na aquisição de bases de dados como Reuters e Bloomberg, em que nós tenhamos acesso a essa base de dados de mergers and acquisitions que estejam acontecendo e, com base nisso, também e com a ajuda do mercado, identificar operações que mereçam um escrutínio maior. Isso não significa dizer que nós descartemos a possibilidade de revisões ao mesmo tempo. Em relação a incumbentes adquirindo startups, essa tem sido também uma preocupação que influencia a análise de vários casos, né? E eu trago aqui, por exemplo, o caso de Naspers Delivery Hero, que tem a ver com o software de iFood, por exemplo, para aquisição de alimentação por softwares, né, por aplicativos. Na decisão da superintendência, o CAD deixou bem explícito essa preocupação. Até compartilho uma parte desse parecer que diz, né, que se toda startup que começa a despontar é adquirida pela iFood, é improvável que alguma se desenvolva plenamente, de modo a poder oferecer alguma rivalidade no mercado, e que o CAD e que a autoridade brasileira estaria bastante atenta a esse tipo de movimentação, né? Em relação à definição de mercado relevante em plataformas múltiplos lados, tem tido uma discussão bastante ampla em toda a academia, como em vários fóruns internacionais. Nós também temos tentado acompanhar muitas dessas discussões. Não acho que seja possível dizer que conseguimos estabelecer um padrão claro, mas algo que tem sido levado em conta é que, muitas vezes, conseguimos avaliar um determinado caso, prescindindo de uma definição muito precisa de mercado relevante, também em face do dinamismo dessas economias. E uma outra abordagem é, tendo em vista a dificuldade de ter uma definição precisa, trabalhar com eventuais cenários, como o determinado caso pode ser visto à luz de diferentes possibilidades. Em relação a condutas envolvendo algoritmos, nós entendemos que conhecer mais de perto o que são esses algoritmos é de fato crucial para que nós consigamos tratar desses dados de forma melhor. Então, um dos modos como o CAD tem lidado com isso é tentar incorporar os algoritmos como parte do seu próprio ferramental. Então, para isso, nós temos um projeto chamado Projeto Cérebro, que usa também dados, usa informação de, por exemplo, leilões eletrônicos, com base em machine learning e em técnicas similares, tentar identificar indícios de colusão. Então, esse é um dos modos como nós também temos tentado lidar com essa questão. Além disso, temos avançado nossas discussões sobre efeitos no preço, toda a questão de privacidade, efeitos de inovação, qualidade, e também tópicos emergentes que vêm surgindo. Aqui eu trago uma comparação que pareceu bastante interessante da era industrial com a era da economia digital. Então, nós antes tínhamos um foco bastante em produtos, Talvez o locus da competição agora esteja mais indo para plataformas. Nós tínhamos antes cadeias de valor lineares e agora vamos para esses ecossistemas não lineares, né? Então, todas essas são dimensões que têm que ser levadas em consideração pela autoridade. Nós temos que ter um entendimento melhor do funcionamento desses mercados para conseguir fazer análises mais precisas e adequadas, né? Uma pergunta, por exemplo, até a gente pensa muito em mercado relevante, deveríamos começar a pensar em ecossistemas relevantes? Bom, essas são todas perguntas que não têm, de fato, respostas simples. E muitas delas apontam para essa necessidade de que nós, ao menos adaptemos a nossa caixa de ferramentas de análise. O CAD tem trabalhado, então, tanto internamente quanto internacionalmente para lidar melhor com esses casos. E, nesse sentido, essa cooperação com os países dos BRICS é vista por nós como essencial, de fato, dado esse nosso background comum como economias em desenvolvimento. Nós também estamos prestando bastante atenção para os desenvolvimentos desse tópico em outros fóruns internacionais, como a ICE, a OCDE, e também, como foi mencionado aqui, temos agora o BRICS Competition Law and Policy Center. Estamos estreitando essa relação também com esse fórum, além de uma interação com a própria academia. Em relação a isso, eu também aproveito a oportunidade para fazer aqui uma propaganda e convidá-los para o painel que vai ter à tarde com a discussão de economia digital, em que vai estar presente o nosso economista-chefe, aprofundando também alguns desses tópicos. E, finalmente, eu gostaria de terminar a minha fala com uma citação do físico teórico John Wheeler, na verdade, que diz o seguinte: nós vivemos numa ilha em um mar desconhecido. Conforme a ilha do crescimento cresce, também cresce o litoral da ignorância. Nunca foi mais entusiasmante para nós abraçar essa ignorância para transformá-la em conhecimento. Isso para estarmos cada vez mais aptos a tratarmos de casos envolvendo a economia digital, para promover um ambiente concorrencialmente saudável, onde firmas e inovações possam prosperar. Obrigada a todos.
Muitíssimo obrigado, Patrícia. Acho que a sua fala não podia ser mais oportuna e você foi muito bem sucedida no desafio de atrair a atenção da plateia, apesar da concorrência com celulares, com o computador, como você havia mencionado. Parabéns. Nos restam ainda alguns poucos minutos, então eu gostaria de abrir o nosso painel para duas perguntas, talvez? Duas perguntas, Márcio? Vejo que a gente tem uma pergunta ali, mais alguém? Duas perguntas pontual.
Oi, primeiramente, parabéns pelo painel. Meu nome é Bruno, eu sou advogado no Pereira Neto. Eu vou fazer uma pergunta para a Patrícia, mas seria bom ouvir também os palestrantes para a experiência internacional. Patrícia, você comentou do efeito não preço e principalmente da privacidade. O CAD já afastou em algumas oportunidades, eu lembro do caso da Form, a privacidade do escopo de atuação do CAD. Eu queria saber de você como que você acha que vai ser a atuação do CAD a partir do momento que esses casos vierem, e também com a interação com a Lei de Proteção de Dados. E se o pessoal dos BRICS também quiser comentar da experiência internacional deles, seria bem válido. Obrigado.
Você vai pegar as três?
Vamos para a próxima pergunta, então, e ao final a gente responde tudo numa rodada só, que tal? A gente tem, então, o Márcio e o Furquim. Okay. Vai em frente, Márcio. Você está com...
Parabéns pela sessão. Eu só queria comentar se algumas plataformas existiam há muitos anos, como, por exemplo, jornais, mídia. E será que a nossa experiência nesses mercados não pode ajudar na análise que temos, para a gente não ficar tão preocupado que o mundo é tão desconhecido? Se talvez não seja.
Bem, parabéns pelo painel. Eu queria fazer uma pergunta específica à doutora Payal Malik. Nós tivemos notícia pela imprensa aqui no Brasil que a Índia baniu, ou pelo menos restringiu, o Free Basics, que é um serviço prestado, oferecido pelo Facebook. Eu queria saber se essa decisão de banir ou de restringir o Free Basics foi uma decisão regulatória ou se houve também alguma preocupação concorrencial, e se houve uma preocupação concorrencial, qual foi ela? Obrigado.
Perfeito, obrigado. Então, podemos começar por você, Patrícia?
Bom, em relação à pergunta sobre privacidade, acho que essa, de fato, é a pergunta que todos estão querendo saber e, muitas vezes, ela atrai bastante atenção mesmo. A posição que eu posso passar é que esse é um tópico que ainda, de fato, não está definido com clareza, né? O que nós temos feito como autoridade é analisar fatores não preço, sejam eles de privacidade, sejam eles de qualidade, que possam ser relevantes no caso específico, né? Então, isso não significa dizer que a autoridade não vai olhar para a privacidade, e, ao mesmo tempo, isso não significa dizer que a autoridade vai ser a guardiã da privacidade no Brasil, né? Temos agora, de fato, a nova lei, e o desenvolvimento da implementação dela pode trazer novidades que ainda não estão delineadas de forma clara, mas o posicionamento, por enquanto, é este, né? Se a privacidade for um aspecto que traga questões concorrenciais, de fato, o CAD vai ser bastante atento em olhar. Se a privacidade for um aspecto que não esteja diretamente relacionado ao caso específico, muito provavelmente não vai ser uma dimensão tão relevante. Mas como isso vai avançar ao longo do tempo, com a nova lei, ainda não está delineado de forma clara. Acho que, em relação à pergunta do pontual das plataformas, de fato, muitas vezes a gente fala de plataformas e parece que elas surgiram agora, né? Mas nós temos shopping centers, temos, né, jornais tradicionais, e tudo isso, com certeza, é uma literatura que auxilia em analisar todo esses novos desafios com a economia digital. Eu acho que um fator que agrega às plataformas é que, agora, o papel dos dados e de algoritmos tem sido muito maior. Então, é essa interconexão de uma utilização cada vez mais crescente e pervasiva de plataformas, em conjunto com dados e algoritmos, é que traz mais desafios, né? Como pensar, por exemplo, em restrições verticais no caso de plataforma? Como analisar poder de mercado levando em conta as diferentes dimensões, né? Então, de fato, tem toda uma literatura que pode ser utilizada, não é um aspecto completamente novo, mas, com todas essas novas dimensões, imaginamos que tem aí outras questões para serem endereçadas. Acho que eu vou dar o espaço para os outros colegas.
Então, Payal, por favor.
Yeah, so if you can hear me. Yeah. So the question which was asked about regarding the fact that other platforms such as media, etc., always existed, newspapers, I would also add, for instance, bars where the men and women meet, that's also a platform. So how's that kind of literature helping us in the present day digital platforms? The slight difference I would like to mention here is, again, the collection of data. The huge amount of data which is collected, that capability was not there in those old kind of platforms, be it the shopping center, be it the newspapers, etc. And the ability of these platforms, therefore, to enter into what are known as adjacent markets. And entering into adjacent downstream markets, is it or is it not? And again, it will be a case-by-case investigation leading to chilling of innovation in the downstream market. To just give you an example, how would have anyone thought a search engine would get into driverless cars? So that is the power of big data, getting into adjacent markets, and so therefore it has to be seen with a new lens to answer your question. And regarding privacy in India, as we have said, that we are just beginning with our journey into a data protection law, which is and the courts, even the Supreme Court, has taken up privacy, and so therefore, I think the general feel in the country as of now, and I agree with Patricia absolutely, till if privacy is an antitrust-specific issue, and if it comes up, we will be looking at it. But the general impression in the country is that the generalist courts, under the not only a generalist court, there is a data protection authority. That is a regulator, which is to be formed under the data protection law, would look into privacy considerations. And the data protection law spells out various ways in order to keep the privacy objective, and various ways to give power on the data, personal data, to the so-called data principals. So it identifies two sets of agents. One is data principal and the data fiduciary. Data fiduciaries are these companies who would be holding data on behalf of the principal, and it gives certain powers to the principal. Thirdly, on privacy, another important aspect which has guided the philosophy of the legal remedies to privacy issues was India has embarked, and the Indian government embarked on a huge project of collecting biometric identities of individual citizens. This was for the purpose of for giving out the government what you call projects and giving out government subsidies in order to for identification. So if we went too much on the side of privacy, this kind of projects and this kind of subsidy disbursements would be effective. And that was far more important than privacy was. So that's on privacy. Then the question which was asked specifically regarding free basics, yes, we had a huge amount of discussion between the regulators. The free basic issue was taken up by the telecom regulator because it happened to be bundling with the telecom operators, bundling free basics as their applications. The competition authority at that time thought that this could be dealt as an antitrust ex post issue because India needed more access to services, and hence this bundling had a more efficiency kind of argument than an anti-competitive argument, and the market was sufficiently competitive, that is the operators were several, and hence it would not lead to an anti-competitive harm. Having said that, the regulator stepped in, and the telecom regulator stepped in, keeping in mind the fact that the lock-in effects may be very, very strong to deal with ex post, and even the government also stepped in, and so the free basics was banned, but in my personal view, and I had written several articles at that time, it could have been dealt with the antitrust law rather than taking it as a regulatory issue.
Thank you very much, Payal. Como conclusão do nosso painel, eu acho que, além de... Bom, é difícil selecionar tópicos para a conclusão depois de apresentações tão interessantes, mas é evidente que o setor de economia digital é um setor bastante novo, que apresenta diversos desafios. A gente notou diversos desafios em comum entre as autoridades do BRICS, e eu vejo aqui entre os países do BRICS um potencial muito grande de cooperação. Então, sem dúvida, a gente deve continuar fortalecendo essa cooperação, e eu vejo também uma oportunidade para que os países do BRICS exerçam um papel de liderança entre as demais jurisdições na discussão do setor de economia digital. Então, foi um prazer muito grande para mim moderar esse painel com autoridades tão reconhecidas e tão competentes. Muito obrigado a cada um de vocês. Obrigado à nossa plateia pela participação e pela atenção. Obrigado mais uma vez ao IBRAC. Só passando um aviso que o Márcio me pediu, os slides todos estão disponíveis no site do IBRAC, não só do nosso painel, mas de todas as demais apresentações. E a gente retorna com os painéis da tarde às 14h15. E só para fazer mais um comentário que eu estava discutindo, eu estava pensando aqui durante os painéis, os BRICS estão dando importância não só ao multilateralismo, mas outro tema de grande importância também. Interessante notar o gender balance do nosso painel. A gente tem aqui 3 mulheres liderando as discussões e representando os países do BRICS, então isso é importante de se reconhecer também. Obrigado a todos.